Hi, Taylor T. Carlson here, and it's time for another movie review. The Criterion Collection is at it again, having recently moved into the world of 4K discs. I'm probably going to be covering several of those on this channel over the coming months, and I don't think I'll ever get tired of the music of the Beatles, so I was delighted to hear one of their first 4K releases would be A Hard Day's Night. This is the Beatles' first film of 5. It's the only one that's been released by the Criterion Collection so far. Previously, around 2014, it was released as a Blu-ray release, and now we have it in 4K. I'm going to unbox this release, and I'm going to share my opinions on the film as well. Nice close-up of the packaging there, classic photo of the band, John, Paul, George, and Ringo. There's the spine. Bottom. The top. Here's our main case. This, of course, slides off. Title of the film right there. Spine. Back cover with another photo of the band. We fold this open, and we have our discs in here and the booklets here. The booklet's not really attached anywhere. It just kind of fits in here loosely, so I almost dropped that a second ago. We'll take a look at the book before we move on to the discs. The back and the spine are just plain on that. So you got a few of the obligatory essays and photographs in here. Here's a great shot of director Richard Lester. He would direct their second film, Help, and then he would also go on to direct the second and third Superman movies starring Christopher Reeve. So he's a guy that certainly kept busy in his career. Just going to show a few sample pages in here so you can get an idea of what's included. And here's some rare color stills. The film itself is in black and white, of course. Here we have our two discs. Not a fan of when they stack discs like this and they overlap because it's a pain to get what you're looking for off of there. So I'm going to take these off real quick. Underneath, we've got a nice shot of the band playing on stage. Here's our Blu-ray disc. From what I could tell when I put this in my player, it's identical to the previously released Blu-ray that was a standalone release of sorts. My player even recognized it as the old Blu-ray that I'd previously watched in there, interestingly enough. And here is our 4K disc. Now, the initial 4K release had some defects where some shots in the movie were in the wrong place, but from what I can tell, Criterion has fixed that because this is a disc that I didn't see any problems with personally. A Hard Day's Night, again, is the first film by the Beatles. There's not a whole lot of a plot to this movie. It's pretty much the band just going around on their tour, dealing with a lot of hassles. They want to go out and have a good time, but of course their management has to keep them on a pretty tight leash and stick to a pretty strict schedule. Meanwhile, they're carting around Paul's grandfather, who, of course, causes plenty more trouble for the band. The group is scheduled to make a television appearance, but of course, they want to run out and have fun. Throughout the movie, you get a lot of good comedy, but then there's also plenty of musical sequences. Being the Beatles, of course, you can't really expect anything else there. I love the Beatles, and A Hard Day's Night, the soundtrack to the film, was the third studio album released by the band. The UK version was just all the songs from the movie plus several additional ones, whereas the American soundtrack was the songs from the movie plus some instrumental, easy listening versions of the songs that were not on the original UK LP. The film itself is pretty enjoyable. Of all the Beatles films, I think this is my favorite. It's just fun, comedic simplicity. You get the Beatles playing themselves, so they don't really have to do much of a stretch to really make these parts work. They just basically, be themselves on camera. I mean, obviously there's a little bit of exaggeration on their part to make the comedy work and so forth, but it's great to see the Fab Four on the big screen, and getting this movie reissued as a fan of the band is something I certainly, as a fan, look forward to. And I'm glad to see that the Criterion Collection made this one of the first 4K discs that they released. I'm happy to say that this release of A Hard Day's Night looks absolutely beautiful. Well, certainly not the best looking vintage film I've seen on a 4K ultra high def disc. I won't deny that this looks very good. If I had to take a guess, I would say this is probably the same master as the previously released Blu-ray, but of course shown in native 4K. and it looks very good. A lot of people say, oh no, you're not going to get any benefit on 4K with black and white films. And of course, that's a bunch of nonsense because A Hard Day's Night looks absolutely beautiful, and this trumps even the already excellent looking Blu-ray disc. Just a disclaimer, of course, that any image you see in this video was taken from the Blu-ray and not the 4K, but it should give you a general idea of the overall picture quality. There's quite a few supplements here. I think it's mainly just the same assortment that was on the previous Blu-ray release. So there's some nice featurettes on the making of the movie and about the band. You even get Richard Lester's vintage running, jumping, and standing still comedy film. It's in pretty shoddy shape, but I do appreciate the inclusion of that because it shows just how funny of a guy Richard Lester could be with his sense of humor. I don't think any Beatles fan or fan of vintage musical comedy films is going to be disappointed with what they see here. Are you a Beatles fan? What do you think their best movie is? Would you put A Hard Day's Night at the top, or are you a bigger fan of one of their later films? Comment down below and let me know what you think. Also, remember to subscribe to this channel for more content because I'm always posting new videos, and make sure you give this one a like if you found it helpful. I'm Taylor T. Carlson. See you next time.